Hey y'all, No here. So this week we're going to finish up our series of lessons on the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ. So this will be our fifth lesson in the series. And today's lesson is specifically about the relationship that the Apostle Peter and Jesus had with each other, and how that relationship kind of grew and evolved during this time of great stress to both of them. And so it's a lot to cover, and you're going to have to do a good bit of review work because your students probably may have forgotten, things about the first lesson and so on until they got up to this last lesson. So you may need to kind of review the events that you've covered so far. So usually what I would try to do is go back to the Last Supper and talk about how after Jesus had washed the disciples' feet and they had eaten the Passover meal, after all that was over, after Judas had left the room to go get the Pharisees to betray Jesus, they left the place where they were eating the Passover meal, and they walked to the Mount of Olives, which is a place where Jesus frequently went to pray and his disciples with him. And so the first scripture we're going to be reading, this is actually something that Jesus was saying to his disciples as they walked to the Mount of Olives. And it's found in Matthew 26, verses 31 through 34. So Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike down the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have been raised, I will go before you to Galilee." But Peter answered and said to him, "Even though all may fall away because of you, I will never fall away." But Jesus said to him, "Truly I say to you that this very night, before a cock crows, you shall deny me 3 times. So this is a pretty famous passage here that is talked about a lot. There's a lot that you can learn from the events that happened between Peter and Jesus, before the crucifixion and afterwards. So after Jesus said this, and Peter makes his great speech about, I will never fall away, Lord. Never is a word that gets used a lot these days, especially. It's a word that should be used a lot less. An old saying of mine is never say never. So Jesus and the 11 remaining disciples went a little farther on so that Jesus could be alone to pray. And we know the story. Jesus prayed 3 times and they fell asleep 3 times. And so after Jesus had asked the Father if the cup could if he could avoid the crucifixion, and the Father answered, "No, you must go to the cross." After he had finished praying, the soldiers came, led by Judas, to take Jesus away to be crucified. And so, as that was happening, it just exactly what Jesus said would happen, did happen. All the disciples ran away, just like Jesus said they would. But Peter stopped and turned around and followed at a distance. So I guess they all fell, but maybe Peter didn't fall as far away as some of them did. And so they took Jesus away to a place to accuse him of things that he hadn't done. And so the next passage of scripture that we're going to read is still in Matthew 26, but we're going to skip down to verse 69, and we're going to go all the way through verse 75. And as we read this, I want you to pay attention to the emotion that Peter displays when he is accused of knowing Christ, and how it starts out pretty calm, but each time he is accused, he gets a little more emotional. So starting in verse 69, and this is while Jesus is on the supposed trial to find something against him. It says in verse 69, now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, that is, in the courtyard of the high priest, and a certain servant girl came to him and said, you too were with Jesus the Galilean. But he denied it before them all, saying, I do not know what you're talking about. So that's pretty calm. And when he had gone out to the gateway, another servant girl saw him and said to those who were there, this man was with Jesus of Nazareth. And again, Peter denied it with an oath, I do not know the man. So this time, Peter swears. So a little bit more emotional, quite a bit more actually. And a little while later, the bystanders came up and said to Peter, surely you too are one of them, for the way you talk gives you away. And then he, that is Peter, began to curse and to swear, I do not know the man. And immediately a cock crowed. And Peter remembered the word which Jesus had said, before a cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. And he, that is Peter, went out and wept bitterly. So now, they did accuse Jesus of the crimes that he did not commit. And then the next day, they crucified Jesus, but he rose from the dead. And Peter even got to see him again. And Peter was happy that Jesus was alive, but he was sad that he had denied knowing Jesus, and also sorry that he never got a chance to tell Jesus how sorry he was, because the time when Peter saw Jesus on Resurrection Sunday was he was in the group with the rest of the disciples, so he never had an opportunity to have a private conversation with Jesus. And so even though Peter had seen Jesus on that day, he never got the chance to actually talk to Jesus about what had happened on that night. And so time went on, and then one night Peter said to the other disciples, and this is found in John chapter 21, and we're going to read verses 3 through 17. And so this is what Peter said to the other disciples, starting in verse 3 of chapter 21 of John's Gospel. Simon Peter said to them, that is to the other disciples, I'm going fishing. And they said to him, we will also come with you. And so they went out and got into the boat, and that night they fished all night and caught nothing. But when the day was now about to break, Jesus was standing on the shore of the lake, yet the disciples didn't know that it was Jesus. And Jesus therefore said to them, children, you have not caught any fish. You do not have any fish, do you? And they answered him and said, no. And he said to them, cast the net on the right-hand side of the boat, and you will find a catch. And so they cast the net there, and then they were not able to haul it in because of the great number of fish. That disciple, therefore, whom Jesus loved, who was John, said to Peter, it's the Lord. And so when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put his outer garment on and threw himself into the sea. But the other disciples came into the little boat, for they were not far from the land, but about 100 yards away, dragging a net full of fish. And so when they got out upon the land, they saw a charcoal fire already laid and fish placed on it and bread. And Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish which you have caught. Simon Peter went up and drew the net to land, full of large fish, 153, and although there were so many, the net was not torn. And Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. None of the disciples ventured to question him, who are you? Because they knew that it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and the fish likewise. Now, this was the third time that Jesus had manifested himself to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. So when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, now I want you to notice how Peter answers Jesus. Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? And he, that is Peter, said to him, yes, Lord, you know I love you. And Jesus said to him, tend my lambs. And then Jesus said to him a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And he said to Jesus, yes, Lord, you know I love you. And he said to him, shepherd my sheep. So the first time, Peter just says, he said, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And then the second time, he also says, yes, you know that I love you. And Jesus said to Peter the third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was grieved because he had said to him the third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. And Jesus said to him, tend my sheep. So, if we go back and look at all that happened from the night that Jesus was arrested to this day, we see a real parallel, because Peter denied knowing Jesus 3 times, just like Jesus said he would. And each time he denied him in a continually more emotional way. And as Jesus asked Peter on this day, do you love me? And the first time, Peter just kind of says, yes, Lord, I love you. And then the next time, it seems like it's more emotional, like, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And then the third time, it just really cuts Peter to the heart, and he says, Lord, you know everything, and so you know that I love you. And each time after Jesus asked him those three questions, each time is followed with a command to tend my lambs, shepherd my sheep, tend my sheep. And was it a coincidence that Peter denied Jesus 3 times and Jesus allowed Peter the opportunity to tell him that he loved Jesus 3 times? You know, Scripture doesn't tell us that that was the reason that it was 3 times and 3 times. But I think it very well could have been, because it's not natural. If you ask somebody a question, if you ask someone if they love you or not, and they say that they do, is it really natural to just ask them immediately again, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? Yeah, once somebody tells you that they love you, normally you wouldn't ask them immediately again if they love you. So maybe it wasn't, or maybe it was. Either way, though, we can learn a lot, a whole lot from these passages strung together. And probably one of the things to learn, is to never say never, that you're never going to do something, or that you never will refuse to do something, because we don't know what we'll do absolutely until we're faced with a situation. But what we want to focus the lesson on is, yes, Peter made a mistake that he regretted. He regretted deeply denying that he knew Jesus. And, it seems like he didn't even realize that he was doing it while he did it. But when he heard that rooster crow, he knew, and he felt so sorry for what he had done. They just went out and cried. But if we look at when Jesus asked him, do you love me? And Peter said that he did. Then Jesus gave Peter a responsibility each time that he said that he loved him, which was to tend my lambs, shepherd my sheep, and tend my sheep. So I think this was Jesus' way of saying, Peter, I knew you were going to deny me. I told you that you were going to. I forgave you before you even did it, because I knew you were going to do it. And honestly, you were supposed to have done it, because all of you were supposed to have run away, because that's what the Old Testament said would happen. But I think when Jesus gave him the responsibility, tend my lambs, shepherd my sheep, tend my sheep, that was Jesus' way of saying, yes, you made a mistake, but I still have confidence in you, and you're going to have great responsibility in just a few more days after I send to heaven, Peter. You're going to have a great responsibility that you don't even understand yet. And so, I think the thing that we can or need to ask ourselves too, it's easy to point the finger at Peter and say, yes, you denied Jesus. And it's easy for us to say, I would never do that. But you know what? If we're honest with ourselves, we would have to admit that, even though we don't have a lot of people come up and ask us, do you know Jesus? I wish that more people would ask me that, because I would be glad to tell them. But, there are other ways that we can deny knowing Jesus also. And that is by not taking advantage of the opportunities that we have to tell people about Jesus. Or when we hear people say that Jesus is just a made-up story, and we keep our mouths shut and don't tell the truth about the resurrection. And many other opportunities like that. I know you know what I'm talking about. That time when you had a split second that you could have told somebody about Christ, but then that little hesitation made that opportunity to go away. No, you didn't tell someone, I don't know who Jesus is either. I think it's a hoax. But when you don't take advantage of those opportunities to tell people about Jesus in a way that is very similar, if not the same as what Peter did on that night. So our craft this week, we're going to make a sheep, and we're going to feed that sheep, just like Jesus told Peter to do. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what it meant for Peter to feed the sheep that Jesus was talking about, and what it means to us to feed sheep also. So let's go and make a sheep and feed him, okay? Okay, so here is our finished product. And this sheep has got a few miles on him and a few years on him. But what we've done is we've taken a sheep and we've given him some grass, some plastic grass to eat. And then we have what Jesus told Peter to do. We'll talk about that a little bit later at the end of the craft. But the quotation says, Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." That's not all that he said to Peter. He said three similar things, but not all three of those things were exactly alike. But we'll get to that at the end of the craft time. So what I'm going to do is go through the steps that you're going to have to take to get the materials ready to take the class, and then we'll go through the steps that your students will take to actually take those materials and make them into a craft. So what we're going to start with, and I've already put this part together, but basically what you're going to need is some AstroTurf. I get mine at Lowe's, or I got mine at Lowe's back when I was teaching. It's not very expensive, or at least it wasn't back then. I guess everything's a little more expensive than it was back then. If you didn't want to spend the money on AstroTurf, you could use possibly some green construction paper. So what I did was I just got a piece of cardstock, and then I printed the caption on the cardstock, and then I used hot melt glue to glue the AstroTurf to the piece of cardstock. Just make sure that you cut the AstroTurf small enough that it's not going to cover up the caption, but also large enough that your sheep will fit on the AstroTurf with a little bit to spare even. So that takes care of the grass. Now let's talk about what you're going to do to make the sheep. So I think I got this picture of a sheep out of a coloring book, actually. And you can probably get a picture of a sheep, like a cartoon character type sheep, off the internet somewhere. Just make sure it'll fit on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And then what you're going to do in order to make the sheep stick onto the AstroTurf is you're going to use some two-sided tape, commonly known as carpet tape. And so it looks something like this. And so it's sticky on both sides, and it has a backing that you peel off. And so what you're going to do, I printed my sheep on just regular paper, not on cardstock. And I do that for a reason. And that is, when you get ready to put your tape on the back side of the sheep, cardstock's a little bit harder to see through than regular paper. So when you start trying to put your tape on the sheep, you want to put it on the part of the sheep that you're going to keep, because as you remember, eventually we're going to cut out this sheep before we stick the sheep on the grass. So you can save yourself a little bit of tape, and it's easier to cut out too if your students don't have to actually cut through a piece of tape. So what I do is I put a piece of tape about here and let it come down onto the sheep's hooves, and then another piece here that'll go from the top of his head down to his hooves. So that's going to take care of the materials that you're going to have to prepare, which mainly is your grass and your sheep. Some additional materials that you're going to need. What you're going to use to make the wool on the sheep are some cotton balls. And then to stick the wool onto the sheep, you're going to need glue sticks, a pair of scissors, and some black crayons or brown crayons that you're going to use to color the part of the sheep that you're not going to put wool on, namely the hooves, and you can even color the nose and the eyes and maybe even the face if your students like to. You can bring some other colors of crayons if they want to color the eyes and the face of the sheep. So with that said, let's get into the step-by-step things that you're going to do in order to finish the sheep. So I'm going to actually go through the whole thing from scratch, except for the part where I made the materials, but I'm going to go through the part that your students are actually going to do. Feel free to fast forward through any of it that you like, but I thought I would actually do one from beginning to end so you can get an idea of how long it might take your students to finish it. So I'm going to turn it right side up for me in order to color it. And this is the step that you want to do first, because it's easier to color the picture before you cut it out, because that gives you something to hold on to keep the paper from sliding around. And you can use brown crayons, perhaps. I'm not really ever inspected a sheep's hooves to see just what color they are. They're probably more of a translucent kind of color than black or brown. I guess it might depend on what your sheep's been walking around in too. And then I'm going to color the nose up here. All right, and then once we've got all that colored, then we're ready to cut out the outline of the sheep. Now my sheep, there's a little gap in between these two legs, but no need to cut that out, although I have had some students in the past that insisted on cutting that part out. But it's not very easy to cut out up in between there. It's also helpful if your sheep has a broad outline, because it's easier to cut around a wide line than a little narrow line. The tricky part, or the trickiest part, is cutting around the ears. Takes a little bit of extra care to make sure you don't get carried away and cut your sheep's ears off. That wouldn't be a very good job of tending the sheep. All right, there we go. Okay, so now we're ready to place our sheep on the grass. And this may actually be the most difficult part of the whole craft, especially if you don't have long fingernails. So what you're going to do is try to peel the backing off the tape. Hey, that was easier than I remembered it being. So I'm going to pull it off like that. And like that. And it's very sticky, okay? That's why it only takes 2 pieces. So try to get your students to get it right the first time, because you put it up here and his head's off the edge, you're not going to be able to peel it back off very easily, if at all. So that looks pretty good to me. Centered up pretty good. So then I'm going to place it down here. And then we're going to gently at first press it down. And then a little bit more vigorously. And it sticks pretty good. It sticks pretty good. Okay, so now we're ready to put the wool on the sheep. So we're just going to get us some cotton balls out here. You might think it would take a lot, but it doesn't take nearly as much as you think it would. So a good rule of thumb is to start at the bottom and work your way up. And what I usually do is not putting wool on the legs. If you get a bunch of wool on the legs, you really can't tell their legs anymore. So I usually use that part blank and then leave the face blank and the ears blank. So we're going to start at the bottom, and we're going to put some glue stick down here. We're not going to glue stick the whole thing at once. And here's the tricky part. You're not just going to take big blobs of cotton and stick it on. So what you're going to do is tear the cotton, something like this. Stick it on. And stick it on. So it ends up looking kind of smooth instead of just big lumps of wool. Fill in that little space right there. And then let's put a little bit of glue up above there. And you can see how tearing the cotton uses a lot less cotton, because I've got at least 25% of my sheep with wool on him, and it's only taken 2 cotton balls so far. All right, let's come on up a little bit more. Yep, one more. This might even give you a general idea of how much how many cotton balls each student's going to need. I can never decide whether to do this part around the face. I'm going to go ahead and do it so you can see what it looks like with wool up here and without. The one I showed you at the beginning of the lesson didn't have any around the face. So I'm gonna put some wool around this one's face, and you can decide which one you like the best. Don't think I ever really noticed if sheep have wool around their face or not. It's not the kind of thing you notice, I guess. You do have to tear your cotton off in pretty small pieces to put it around the face, though. Well, I can't really decide which one I do like best, so there's with wool around the face, and there's without wool around the face. It's probably not a fair contest because this sheep is really old. This sheep may have actually had wool around his face at one time and it's just fallen off, because here is some cotton up there. So you can decide for yourself which one you like the best. Okay, now to the question I said we were going to talk about when we finish the craft. And this is not the main lesson that you want your students to learn, but it is something to think about, and that is, okay, so we've got our sheep, and we're feeding our sheep, but what exactly was Jesus talking about when he told Simon Peter, or Simon Bar-Jonah, as Jesus referred to him? what was Jesus talking about? Now, I think it's safe to assume that Jesus was not talking about literal sheep, but that sheep was a metaphor for something else. And so if we look at the scripture closely, Jesus said more than feed my sheep. When he asked Simon the first time, do you love me more than these? And Peter answered yes. And Jesus said, tend my lambs. The second time, Jesus asked Peter, do you love me? And Peter said, yes. You know I love you. Jesus said, shepherd my sheep. Okay, which is, it's similar, but it's not exactly the same words. And then Jesus asked Simon, son of John, the third time, do you love me? And that's when Peter answered, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. So that third time, Jesus said, tend my sheep. So we have three different things that Jesus told Peter to do. He first said, tend my lambs. The second time, he said, shepherd my sheep. The third time, he said, tend my sheep. Which all three of those things are very similar things, but they're not exactly alike. So the question arises, what was Jesus talking about? What were these sheep and these lambs that Jesus was talking about? And I don't know for sure. I think it's pretty obvious that Peter understood what Jesus meant, because Peter didn't say anything like, tend my lambs. What are you talking about, Lord? What lambs? So it seems that it was obvious to Peter what lambs and what sheep Jesus was talking about. But, the sheep and the lambs could mean different things. The sheep could mean the Jewish unbelievers, or it could mean the Jewish believers. Jesus often referred to Israel as the lost sheep, and he referred to himself as the good shepherd. So it could be that. Could be that Jesus was talking about all unbelievers. It could be that Jesus was talking about the church that was soon to be birthed on the day of Pentecost. And if we recall, on the day of Pentecost, Peter preached a sermon to thousands of people there at the temple in Jerusalem, most of whom were people who were there celebrating the Passover. So I think any one of those meanings could be correct, and maybe all three of them are correct. And, he gave that command to Peter, but what is the command to us? And I think that would be, to share the gospel, to make disciples, basically to carry out the Great Commission that Jesus gave right before he ascended back into heaven. So, that is not the main lesson we're trying to teach your students. the main lesson that we wanted to teach your students in this lesson was that Peter made a mistake. Jesus forgave Peter for denying him 3 times. But Jesus did not lose confidence in Peter because he gave Peter the chance 3 times to tell Jesus he loved him. And Jesus gave Peter 3 commands telling him what to do because he did love Jesus. So that is the last of the lessons about the crucifixion and resurrection. I hope your students have learned a lot about the meaning of the crucifixion and the resurrection as you've gone through all of these, and that it's not a made-up story, it's not a fairy tale, it is absolute fact that Jesus was crucified, he did rise from the dead, and he is coming back someday for the church. So, what's next week's lesson going to be about? Well, God hadn't told me yet, but he will. So, until then, thank you each and every one for watching. God bless you each and every one, and vaya con Dios.